if you look in the book, so it's by Robert Quinn, the thing that he says is that deep change means surrendering control. And that's probably the biggest aspect of it, because I've been a control freak since day one, I think. And you know this clearer than I think. And you get into this process and this journey of going through, you know, the cancer diagnosis, the treatment, all of it, the class, that was the biggest thing I learned, is I had to let go of control and having to learn to lean into others, and that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to take help, and to really, you're going to become a stronger leader when you realize what people can give to you and not just what you can control or make happen. And so I think that's the transformation that I see, is like letting go of control, to let things happen and to really let it unfold, surrendering control. I mean, there's still aspects of control, of course, that you have to have. But I think that's that whole thing of life's going to happen, and then how do you adapt? How do you make the most of it, to really transform? And, you know, it is one of those things, it sounds crazy to say, but having cancer was the best thing that could have happened to me.
Welcome to Winning Strategies Playbook, the podcast where we welcome business leaders, CEOs, and industry experts to discuss the rise to the top, building wealth, and real estate insights. Here's your host, Jeremy Spann.
Welcome to Winning Strategies Playbook. For more information on this show, go to our website, myexperiencedrealtor.com. That's experience with an ED. If you're looking to buy and sell real estate anywhere on the planet, click that Find a Trusted Professional. We'll get you hooked up anywhere, even if it's not here in Fort Worth, to make sure you got somebody that represents your interest. But more importantly, click on that podcast button, scroll down to this episode and other episodes. Hit the read more to listen, and download this episode to find more information on my friend Kim, my hero, Kim Speairs. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you for coming. I have wanted to get you on this show since I started. So it only took me a year and a half now to finally, and I think I put you on the spot Saturday night at Cowtown Warrior Ball to be like, I've totally fronted you out. I was like, no, you're coming. You're like, hey, what are you doing Monday? Oh, I don't have any travel. I was like, cool, pick your slot. You're coming this time.
You did. You finally got me in.
So I started every one of these off with an annoying joke to make my father-in-law mad, since he said I got to do a joke before every show. You ready for this one? How do you follow Will Smith in the snow?
I have no idea.
You follow his fresh prints.
There you go.
Now, none of these jokes are good. And being that you're a marketing professional, there's still nothing you could do that could help me out.
I like that they're at least PG, though, Jeremy, unlike some of our others that we've heard.
I have been known to tell some non-PC jokes.
Oh, maybe once or twice.
So for the audience, Kim and I know each other because we're not only TCU alumni with our undergrads, but we also did our MBAs together at TCU. And actually, when we did our MBAs at TCU, you and I were the only TCU alum our class, right?
Yeah, we were.
Yeah, we were the only ones that really, truly bled purple through.
Yes, double degreed.
That's right. And so we met each other back in 2013, and we started, so it's a cohort program, executive MBA. And I think you and I both agree that probably one of the most life-changing, pivotal moments in our life, which we'll dive through. And we were just talking about you yesterday.
Oh, should I be nervous?
So we were at lunch with Chris and Amber Jameson, who are friends of ours that came to Cowtown Warrior Ball this last weekend. And we were they were asking me, hey, what do you got going on this week? I said, well, I'm recording tomorrow. And Lauren asked, hey, did you finally get Kim to come on? And I said, yeah. I said, well, we're going to find out if she shows up or not. She might say, like, hey, I had to jump a flight to Houston or something like that. But it was funny is during in-residence weekend, so when you do an executive MBA program like at TCU, they do an in-residence weekend. It's like, what was it, like 4 or 5 days or something like that?
It was 3. It may have felt like 4 or 5.
It may have felt like 4 or 5. And they put us up in a hotel. Everybody gets to meet each other. And the thing is for the most part, everybody in class is like mid-30s to mid-50s. I don't know. Clint might have been pretty close to 60.
Watch out.
But, right. And, different executives from different industries, and it's a cohort class every other weekend, Friday, Saturday. So you're still busy. Everybody's in the same shoes. Everybody's got family, they got careers, they got responsibilities, and, hey, I didn't have enough brain damage. Let me go ahead and do an MBA in the middle of all this. And so Laura was telling her friend, she was like, yeah, when I met Kim, and you come up and said, hi, my name is Kim Speairs. And Laura was like, hi, how do you spell your last name? And then turns out Kim's ex-husband and Laura's first boyfriend from way before Kim got married, that Laura was quickly to point out to our friends yesterday, were one of the same. And so it was just kind of funny how small this world really is.
Exactly.
And so then we start the program. And one of the things that you do in the program is you get assigned to a team, and you're on 3 different teams throughout the whole program. So first third of the program, one team. Second half of the program, you're with another team. And then third part of the program, you're with the final team. And I think we were talking about this on Saturday a little bit, which was really, really funny. And we'll dive into more of this. Is at the end of your first team, they do these evaluations. Everybody evaluates you, right? How you did that was on your team. And I was really annoyed because these were great people that I was on my team with. But there was a lot of things they had put in the comments that they had never told me while we were going through it. And I was like, man, that would have been nice to know because I would have adjusted. And then so my second team, I was on Kim's team. Kim, Mike Larson, Julie Chavez, Matthew Smiler. Matthew's been on the show before. And so anyhow, I opened it up with like, hey, these are some things that were indicated. So if y'all see this, don't hold back. Don't hesitate. Just tell me. Yes. Now, which is really funny because I think a lot of people that know me know that I'm a very strong personality. I think a lot of times people are very hesitant to say something because of, they know my resume, they know what I've done in my life, and I'm just kind of a 6-foot guy that, just kind of very loud. Well, what I can say is Kim and this team of people did not hesitate
we did not.
At all to point shit wrong. Hey, no. You need to do your part. So y'all did a great job of holding my feet to the fire, which therefore made me even better going forward.
Yeah.
And so the thing was it was even more so impactful for me when it would come from you.
Oh.
And because you are my hero. I've told you that a million times. I told you that on Saturday, and we'll dive more into exactly the challenges that Kim was faced with. But Kim not only graduated valedictorian, number 1 in our class, right?
Yes.
But did that while fighting cancer, being a single mom of 2, running a marketing agency, full-time MBA. Like I still like. Literally, if I was ever having a bad day, like I didn't want to go do something, I was like, if Kim's showing up, I'm showing up. Because holy cow, man! Because I mean, she's the hero here, and I am not going to be outshined. And but I wouldn't be able to outshine you. But I was going to be damned if I wouldn't show up if you were showing up. And I've always just had that incredible amount of respect for you, not just as a person, as a human, but as a professional and as a classmate. And it just that, and I'm really excited about this episode today because I've always just had this incredible admiration. And with my background, I live in a house full of females. I grew up with a very strong mother, so I'm a very pro-woman guy. And so that's one of the things I've wanted on the show is to have good, strong, professional women to come on here to go, hey, yeah, you find a lot of adversity being a woman in the business place. But you could put baby in a corner. It's just baby is the dude.
You'll make me tear up here, Jeremy. I'll tell you.
So let's go ahead and talk about like where are you from? How did you get to TCU. What led up going to TCU for your undergrad?
Oh, gosh. Well, I actually grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. The whole family still lives back there. So senior year, I think I was applying all over, looking at Mizzou, all sorts of schools. And so TCU was recommended. Didn't know much about it. I was like, oh, it looks kind of cool. Back then they sent you the VHS tapes that look at. So I got the VHS tape.
You're not dating yourself at all.
Oh, I'm really dating myself. So I watch the VHS. I'm like, oh, it looks kind of cool. And so I apply. And they had a strong communications program. I was going to do more broadcast journalism back then. And so I ended up applying and then ended up getting a full scholarship to TCU. And
you were a Chancellor Scholar too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did not realize we had that in common. How did I not? You probably told me, but I just didn't pay attention.
It's okay. Yeah.
So you go as a Chancellor Scholar.
So I got a Chancellor Scholar, so the full scholarship. And then had kind of was trying to decide between that and Rockhurst College, a small college in Kansas City, Missouri. And so kind of got to that point where I was like, I can always come back home. Rockhurst's 3 hours away. And I'm like, how often do you get to go try someplace completely new? So came to TCU, sight unseen, except for the VHS tape. So did not know a soul coming to TCU. Never came and did the campus tour or anything like that. Showed up first week of class for orientation and ended up, falling in love, staying here in Fort Worth. And so graduated 3.5 years, got a job at a local ad agency. At the time, I started interning before I graduated, and they offered me a full-time job. So I was there for 10 years. And then right after I had Caitlin, my first child, 3 months later, the agency closed down. And then I went to work for another agency in Fort Worth called Witherspoon and was there for 2.5 years. And then Philip was born, my son. And then after that, went to work for Balcom Agency, I was there for 12 years. And then after Balcom, ended up leaving and going to work for one of our clients that I'd worked with for 5 years. Started working on when I was in the program. And so now I'm Director of Communications and Engagement at PCCA. So we actually help compounding pharmacies with providing education, products, and support. So really helping pharmacists make personalized medicine for patients who really have no other options really to find wellness. So I get to do a lot with marketing, communications, crisis management, reputation management, and all of that.
So you go to TCU to do broadcasting. Right.
Yeah.
Something must have happened that caused you to shift a little bit.
I realized I wasn't an on-camera person. I'm better behind the scenes. So I kind of went from broadcast journalism to radio, TV, film, and then ended up in public relations, advertising public relations, and then focused on a concentration in marketing. So had the business side of it, but wasn't the true business major over in Neely until we got the MBA. So had more communications background and all of that. And then writing, really kind of more behind the scenes, I would say, whereas broadcast journalism put me more in front of the scenes. So,
and what is it the behind the scenes that's more attractive to you than being in front of the camera?
Oh, I would say, maybe hard to believe now, but I've always been very introvert. Right now, I'm more of an ambivert, where I'll go from introvert to extrovert. You put me in the right situation. But I think that was, kind of growing up, I was kind of more shy, quiet, all of that. So that was more the introvert nature. But I also have a thing to really kind of controlling the narrative. So from behind of what's the story going to be, shaping the strategy, how are we going to get there, what is the vision, and then really helping lead people to drive to that vision. So how do you bring all of it together? I don't need to be the one in the spotlight, but kind of help me make sure the story gets told.
So let me see if I understand this right. So somebody has a story that they want to tell, and you help them tell that story. What are some of the things you do to help them tell that story? What kind of goes into something like that?
I think it's really about, a lot of what you're doing is defining the message. What is the key thing to get across? And then how do you get that as concise and clear as possible from the story and make it interesting, engaging, and relevant to people? Because it can't all be it's not about me, it's about you and what value is that going to bring to you as a person? So really, how do you flip where you're used to talking about it's about me, it's about the company, to what is it that's your need and how is it that we can help be a guide? How can we help you get to that success? So it's really, getting to clarity and getting to conciseness so that people can remember what it is you're going to say.
And what is it about being in that part of it that just really trips your trigger, right? I mean, just really gets you excited. What would you say when you dive into that? Just really just brings it out.
Oh, I think a lot of it is just curiosity. I ask a lot of questions. I'll kind of get to it, but why?
You ask a lot of questions.
I am known for asking a lot of questions. So part of what I just love is learning new things constantly. So whether it's going through the MBA, whether it's reading books, it's really challenge it. And then the opportunity to just discover the stories that people have. So I get excited about learning new things and then really saying, how can we help share that story with other people? How can we make it interesting, engaging, exciting, so people can really see the value and bring it, take advantage of everything it offers?
So what finally made you I know part of the story is because Balcom was doing stuff for the executive MBA program, but what made you because they tried to get you to go do it a couple times, right?
Oh, yeah.
What finally got you to go, you know what? I'm going to pull the trigger on this and go do this.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I started, as you said, so Balcom, in my role, I had been working with the Executive MBA program for probably 5 years or so before. Kevin Davis, I know you've had on the show before. We joked that I was one of the longer recruits. So I had started marketing, really promoting the program and the benefits of it. And, that was one of those times where, when you look at how do you define what the program's about. And so we know that we've seen class on Friday, ROI on Monday. And those were kind of some of the things that really, when you can get to what that clear payoff is and what comes to light. So that I joke about getting to know the program, you learn all of the benefits that you have. And so, but I was slow to, I guess, drag my feet, that I don't think I'd considered it as an option for me. Like when I first started working on marketing, I was married at the time, never even crossed my mind, like, how could you fit this in? How could you make this happen? And so it was right about 2012. I think it was the first time I really seriously thought about doing the program. And Kevin was like, all right, let's go ahead and get you signed up. Let's do this. And so I went to all of the preview luncheons they have and was paired up. And I was really seriously at it. At that point, I was about 2 years. I'd been divorced probably about 2 years, and was ready to do something for myself. And so it was, as I looked at it, I really needed a challenge, something to really engage me, get me going. And so that was what it kind of popped up as far as here's a chance to do it. The other thing that was happening on at work is I'd been working at Balcom probably for 8-9 years at the time. Loved my job, what I was doing, moving more into management than day-to-day, strategic planning and working with clients. But really realized I needed a fresh perspective. I needed something to kind of, get me excited, something new to really engage. And so I had this thing happen personally, like, all right, am I going to do it? And then the last kind of final straw was I had one of my team members who reported me at Balcom. He was in his 20s, like younger, and we were doing his annual review, and he's like, Kim, I'm going to sign up. I'm going to go and do the MBA program at TCU this year. I really want to get it done, the part-time MBA. And all of a sudden, I'm extremely competitive in nature, and I'm like, there's no way you're going to get your MBA before I do. Like, this is my goal. I need to do it. And so that was kind of the kick in the butt that I finally needed. Like, this is more important to you than you think it is, and you're going to make it happen. So that was what I needed to finally say, this is something I've been wanting. I need to take it, do it for myself. And so that's when finally, in 2013, I signed up to do the program.
When was it in 2013?
It was still late, like Jamie Timmons Folletto. So she and I attended all the preview lunch, and she's like, I'm submitting my application this week. And so I don't think I put my application until June. Class started in August. And so I think I was admitted in June once I got it done and did the interviews and all of that. But Mike Fields, another one of our classmates, he and I went and sat in on the class together. And Jason Byrne, I think the three of us had sat in on Rob Rhodes' class. And so that was a big change.
That's a hard class to sit in and not commit after that, right?
Exactly.
Rob Rhodes, rest in peace, incredible professor, and dynamic speaker.
Yes.
Like you cannot sit in not an easy class.
Not at all.
Not at all. And so like I was actually supposed to be in the class before ours. Did I ever tell you that?
2012. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
No, did I tell you why I didn't
Why?
end up going? Well, I was all set to sign up in 2012, so that would have been Jeff Montgomery and all those classes.
All those guys, yep.
So, that was like in May. My mother-in-law, she was a former mother-in-law at the time, was diagnosed with cancer. And they basically gave her 6 months to live. And I said, she's super close to me even after the divorce and the kids and all that. And so, I went to Kevin. I said, I don't know what this is going to look like with her. I have to be there for her. And I can't commit to doing this, right now.
Yeah.
Well, that was 2012 and she passed away in 2020. So, she went, but she, obviously that wasn't an issue. Like she had a long life after that diagnosis, but that was a point where I was like, no, I can't do it. I've got to deal with this. And then, of course, then what happened to me personally, who knows, then in 2013, when, I'm 3 months into the program, I get diagnosed with cancer myself. So, it's just interesting how life takes that turn, and I think that's kind of one of those big things that I would say is like just realizing don't put things off. You never know what's coming around the corner, good or bad. So do it now,
Yeah, it's really kind of funny is just how life leads us, right? So it was actually 2011. I'd gone to my first preview luncheon. I had met Jeff Kramer, and he was like, I'm doing this. And I was like, man, I'm doing it too. But I was still working undercover human trafficking, Fort Worth PD. I was still with the PD. And I was in the middle of transitioning out of undercover work back to a detective's role to take a promotional exam and all this stuff that was going on as we got into 2012. And I looked at Kevin Davis and I just said, man, I need to defer a year. I was already deposited, but I told Kevin, I was like, I need to defer a year. And Kevin even told me, he said, some of the staff was like, that guy's not coming. And Kevin's like, no, that guy's coming. He's literally trying to come out of the undercover world, transition, get promoted. He's in the middle of getting married, whole 9 yards. He's got a lot going on, but he'll be here for the next class. And it was really, really ate me up that I didn't start it then, right? Because I'm a high A person, right? But what I didn't know is it would actually be one of the most beneficial things that ever happened, because I still believe to this day that we had one of the most incredible classes. Yes, are we a little bit biased? But even when you talk to the other professors and you talk to the other staff, they're like, there was something about y'all's class that was just different.
100% agree. It's like I truly believe things happen for a reason. You don't know what they are at time. And so I do think that I was in the right place at the right time. That was the class we were meant to be in. I think of the connections that we made. And so, if that happened with my mother-in-law and happened with you, I think there's always reasons for it.
It really is. And I remember in residence weekend, right? And so we're at the hotel that's over there off of Rosedale and Forest Park. Was it the Hilton or something like that there?
Yeah, the Garden Inn.
Garden Inn Hilton. And, so then, on the final day, whatever day it was, Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember what it was, and we do the Myers-Briggs, right? Learn about the different personalities. I'm making fun of Mike Field, as you had alluded to, Mike, one of the most beautiful men you ever met in your life, right? And then,
oh gosh, he's going to hear this.
And he made the mistake of letting me sit next to him for the whole time we were in the program, and I did, and I harassed him, still harass him to this day. But it was just really interesting is that in residence weekend, everybody's just kind of looking around, sizing everybody up, right? Yeah. But you could even feel it then, right? Like, hey, wait a minute, it's really interesting. And the only time I had met anybody was we did a happy hour a week or 2 or 3 weeks before that, where we all went down to, I think it was Rodeo Goat or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so we met Regal. Mike, Smiler, you, me, and I think there was a few other people that were there. And it was just, it was like, man, I don't know. It was just there was just like this feeling, but it was still everybody sizing each other up. Sure. And then we get the program started, and it was literally like drinking from a fire hose.
100%.
Yeah. Oh man. So like we started off. We started off with Short's accounting and Suzanne's strategy, right?
Yes.
That's what we started off at, and then it was blowing and going, and so let's talk about that. So here it is. We're in the first, part of the program. You're a single mom balancing 2 kids. You're running a marketing agency. You're doing this full-time, or not full-time, but executive MBA. And you got, with no telling all the other millions of things you got going on in your life. And then you get some pretty catastrophic news.
Yeah, it was interesting. So, even getting ready to get to that point as a single mom, there's so many different things. Like my kids were 9 and 11 at the time, so pretty young, but involved. But getting help lined up, getting a nanny to take care of them after school, all of that stuff. But we, like you said, we'd finished the first class with Suzanne and Dan Short, and then the next class was Transformational Leadership. Do you remember with Dr. Larry Peters?
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the other class was with it, but the Transformational Leadership made a huge impact on me. And so right about that time.
Why is that? Before we jump into that, why did that make a huge impact for you, that transformational leadership?
Well, I think it all ties together, but It's kind of the same thing. So we did a lot of looking at organizational change and culture that shapes organizations. So that was really kind of topics that I fell in love with. I mean, as far as looking at the influencer model, if you go back to communications, what I love, it's all about influence. So how do you direct it? How do you really shape it? So I was, of course, intrigued by that influencer model. But then we start looking at in the leadership is like what drives strong leaders and what is it that makes one leader stand out from another and really make an impact. And so really diving into exploring it, there's just some of my favorite books, like Deep Change was one we looked at, and we looked at The Speed of Trust by Covey, and just really the basis of relationships and how do you, not just leadership, but personal, and, every connection that you have as you go through life. And so we were in the middle of transformational leadership. And so as per usual, you have your annual checkup. And so there's an annual mammogram that you have to get as part of it. So I, went in. This was early October, kind of my usual time. And so I gone in, they call you back, and they're, a week later, they're like, we need you to come back in, because we need to redo the mammogram, all that. And so I kept thinking, okay, it's nothing. There's no history of breast cancer in my family. This is probably just who knows what it was. But I really kind of had blown it off a little bit, kind of. So I went back, and they're like, well, we need to do we actually need to remove 2 biopsies. So we went in, and at this point, it was, I think, right around Halloween. It was closer to Halloween, so I had to have these unusual biopsies done. I won't go into detail on that. So over the Halloween weekend, we actually had to write a paper due for transformational leadership. And I don't know if you remember this, but it was, what kind of leader do you want to be known as? Or what would your legacy be as a leader? And so I had these biopsies done. It was like Thursday, Friday. Writing this paper, I'm supposed to hear the results kind of coming back Monday. And at this point, I kept thinking, I think this is just going to be a benign kind of thing. I got to get removed. I'm going to get some pain. But I'm kind of in this mindset as I start thinking about this paper to write, going, gosh, what if this is something more that I don't know about? And so it was one of those really pivotal moments for me to sit there and think, what kind of leader do I want to be? What do I want my kids to take away? What the people I work with. And so just going through that exercise of defining what's important to me as a leader and what do I want to be known for. Thinking about it with this frame, like, I don't know what this uncertainty is going to be. What's this news going to be after the results from these biopsies? Is it going to be cancer or not? Not even expecting that it would be, but it was still thinking about it. So it was going through that process of saying, here's what's important to me, and here committing it to paper was really important to me. And I think, you remember the book Deep Change that we looked at. And I think the premise of that was really that leaders have gone through some kind of deep change or significant change that has really driven them and shaped them to be a leader. And I remember reading that book and I was like, oh, I've been through my deep change. I've gone through a divorce. I'm like a single mom. I've got this. Not even having a clue what was coming next, that would be my true deep change. I had read the paper. I wrote the paper, turned it in, and was really shaped by one of our classmates, Hubert Chavez, that you said had shared when he was at West Point. The leadership model at West Point really is be, know, and do, and just loved. And I know you're familiar with that, but loved really what that symbolized, but making that more. What does that mean to me? And that really focusing on more about know. Know, be, and do. And so for me, it was more about knowing and being curious and lifelong learning, that kind of aspect as a leader. And then you go into, being the best person you can, really doing what you can to set the right example, to have integrity, to lead, to be that person your kids look up to, and then making a difference. How are you going to make a difference in the world? So
you get this paper turned in, and then you get some news. Exactly.
So 2 days later, I get the paper turned in, and I hadn't gotten the call from the center that had done the testing. So I finally called, and I said, "Listen, I'm waiting on results. It's been 4 days. You haven't called." And so you get the call. So they're like, "Oh, no one's called you?" I said, "No, I'd really like to know these results because the anxiety of just waiting, not knowing is really what kills you." And so finally someone comes on the phone and they're like, "Have you talked to your doctor?" I'm like, "No, I have not. Can you tell me what the results are, please?" So finally the woman on the phone goes, "Are you sitting down?" "Yes, I'm sitting down." "Are you at a place where you can talk?" "Yes, I'm sitting down." And, then you get the word, "Well, I'm sorry to tell you, but you have cancer." And it's one of those things where it truly is like the stereotype where everything drops out and you don't hear anything, and the words keep echoing in your head as you hear them going, did I really hear that? Because again, it was really the farthest thing from my mind. Like, even though I thought about it, I'm like, oh, this is not going to happen. It's not going to be it. And, it was just kind of a total shock and awe. You're like, did that happen? Did I hear it correctly? And at that point, I was sitting at my office, sitting at my desk in the office. At Balcom, we had a complete open office area. And I didn't even think about taking the call anywhere else because these are my friends. I knew they'd be there to support me. They knew what was going on. But I remember my coworker, Tony, was sitting across from me, and she said, she could visibly see my face just drop. The color drained from my, face as soon as the news came. And so then it was kind of the next step of like, well, you can talk to a doctor. We'll set up an appointment in like 2 weeks and, going through all this rigmarole. And, I said, well, I'm going to have to call you back. I need to process all of this. And so it was, that instantaneous, like, get off the phone, and then being grateful just to have friends there at work that, obviously things changed right away. It was kind of crazy.
So you get this. Was there a sense of disbelief hearing the news?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It felt surreal.
No, they must have it wrong or something like that.
Yeah, it felt surreal. And then even just when you look at the way that it was told, that, I'm having to call saying, what's the news? And then they're like, are you sitting down? Nobody's told you this yet. No, just like, let's get to it, So you think about it was, and I went back and talked to them later. I'm like, you got to fix your approach on this. This is like life-changing news, and this is how you're delivering the message. Because, of course, that's what I'm thinking about. How do you deliver the message? How do you tell the story? And so it definitely was surreal. It's one of those things that you can't even comprehend everything you hear. And then, of course, your mind jumps to what's that next step? Like, what is this going to mean? And you don't know right off the bat. You say you have cancer. Well, what does that mean? Is it, like easy breezy? We're going to go get rid of it. Is it how progressive? You don't know any of that from the initial time. And then they want you to wait 2 weeks before you get in to see a doctor.
Oh, that's got to be just.
And I'm like, there's no way I'm waiting 2 weeks. So, that's where you rally your troops. And I said, okay, I need a doctor referral for this. I need that. And, really lining up people to help you get in. And so I think I got into an appointment the next week to see a breast surgeon, really find out what are we looking at here to get a plan of action going.
And then so who all have you told around this time frame?
Oh, goodness.
So I remember it being pretty quiet up until the news came out, right? But you didn't let it out right away with everybody.
No, I mean, I think really because there was a lot just to figure out what to do and what was it going to mean, and again, not knowing the extent of it. Was it something, small? I just didn't know. So that I probably got that news. That was the first week of November of 2013, and then so it was finally got in to see the doctor. So it wasn't. I went to go meet with the doctor that week in November. My parents came down. It may have even been sooner that. It gets all muddled up. But my parents came down from St. Louis, as soon as I had gotten the news, because I, had to tell my kids, had to figure out what to tell them and all of it. So they came down. I keep trying to remember. I had scheduled an appointment with the breast surgeon, so my parents came down to go to the appointment with me just so that to have another person to hear. So I remember that day I was waiting to go to the appointment. I actually met with Paulette Turner, who is my coach through the Executive MBA program, and we were working on trying to figure out what's your leadership plan, development plan, as far as based on assessments and what are you working on. So she and I were meeting at lunch to go over areas to work, here are the areas I'm working on as a leader. And again, I had just gotten this news. I was waiting to go to the doctor, and I hadn't planned to share it with her. And all of a sudden we're having lunch at Macaroni Grill, of course. And I said, and I think I probably just started tearing up because we're talking about working on, how do you overcome conflict and how do you deal with conflict resolution was one of my topics and areas. And I think I go, Paulette, I can't even focus on this. I said, here's my news, and I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to be able to stay in the program, let alone work on my conflict resolution, all of these aspects. And it was just the graciousness that she had to say, this is about you. What can I do to be here for you? And even just in that moment to stop, and she's like, can we pray? And I just remember being so moved. She's like, I want to pray for you right now. And so we stopped talking about leadership, and it was about me as a person and taking time right then and, to say a prayer for whatever was coming and the journey and all of that. And, those are the kinds of things. And you talk about the program that you can't put in. It's not anything you're going to see on paper. It's that personal connection that people caring about you as an individual and being there for you in that time when you don't know where you're going and what's going to happen next. So
yeah. So then what happens next?
What happens next? Oh goodness. So go to the doctor. We basically did a treatment course. So we ended up the week of Thanksgiving. So again, you're looking at like 2 weeks later. The good news was that it was caught early. So looking at the breast cancer, it was caught early. It was only on in my left breast. It wasn't in the right breast. But the surgeon recommended to do a double mastectomy, a bilateral, and just to eliminate any chance of it coming back and reconstructive surgery after that. So really kind of agreed to it. My mom was a nurse, so she was like, it was nice to have kind of that healthcare background and support. So we ended up scheduling the surgery for the week of Thanksgiving. So same time we're in the middle of classes. So we had the class, I think, the week before Thanksgiving, if I'm remembering correctly. And so at the same time, I got the news for it, and I had to decide, am I going to be able to continue with the program? Like, I don't know what this means. And the doctors are like, we don't know what kind of course of treatment there will be after the surgery. You're going to have to meet with an oncologist, but it won't be, till a month or so after you are done with recovery and all that. And really kind of, they're like, it's your call. They can't tell you one way or the other. It's really kind of your decision. So I did go at that point knowing that the surgery was going to come because I would have to miss the surgery would be over Thanksgiving, and then we had one last weekend of classes left before the semester broke, and I would miss the whole weekend of classes. So at that point, we got done with the doctor. My parents were there, and we told my kids. And, that's one of those hard things, really hard things to do. Probably the second hardest thing I've had to do is to tell the kids. And so we were, gathered around my parents. First of all, they were surprised, like, why are Granny and Papa here, in town? Because they came in for it. So, and I wanted to be very cautious with them, and optimistic. And so told the kids, and their dad was there, and their grandma, and then my parents. And, really trying to make it as not as scary as possible, just saying, we're going to have the surgery, we're going to do it. And I really never opened the door to what the possibilities could be. And I don't think personally I even let myself go to, that basically it was always like, we're going to get this, we're going to fix it, and we're going to move on. It was never a what else could happen. And I never wanted the kids to think that. I didn't even want to let myself go there to what could the other possibility be as far as getting sick. So got all the surgery scheduled. Then at that point, went and talked with Suzanne Carter, the executive director of the MBA program, Linda Costi, and just said, here's where I'm at. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. And that's really when they jumped in and said, we're going to be here to support you, whatever you decide, but if you want to make this happen, we're going to make sure that you have the support to continue in the program, to make sure that it can happen. And so, just kind of having that vote of confidence was a big thing. And then I think that was after I talked to them, then I went in the first group that I had. So Mike Fields was in that, and Brandon Mabry, and J.R. Holland, and all of it. And so I remember sitting the three of them down because we had a big presentation that last week of class that we had to make that obviously been pretty involved in, and we all had to play our part. And I said, you guys, I have surgery coming. And really, just when you could see the impact, I mean, they were shocked, of course, and just to really find out what was going on. And, they jumped in and they're like, we're here for you, whatever we can do. And so I think it was probably the weekend after. So it was probably like right the week when I was having surgery was probably when I started telling other people. You may remember better how it all came out. I don't even know for sure how the rest of the class knew, but.
Well, then we had a little end of semester miracle that helped a little bit, right?
We did, yes.
Had a big freeze.
Oh.
Shut the campus down, so we didn't even make our final class weekend of the semester got deferred to January. So instead of coming back in the middle of January, we came back a week early, right?
Yeah, the first week.
Yeah, so we had like 2 back-to-back weekends, if I remember, to come do our presentations and finish out the semester. Do you think did that play maybe a portion of the role in things to kind of buy in time a little bit or anything? I've never asked you that, so I'm just curious if that helped at all or
No, actually, before I even had the surgery, I decided I was going to continue with the program. Yeah. I had talked to my parents a lot back and forth, and it was like I said, I'm very competitive, and so I'm like I just didn't want to let it go. I've been working so hard, I wanted to be part of it. There was such a strong connection in our class, even to that point that I said to Suzanne and Linda, like, I just can't sit back and let you guys go on and graduate and me not be part of it. That was the hardest thing, is like I just couldn't imagine not experiencing it and already starting with a whole different class. It just wouldn't have been the same. And that was really kind of my motivation. I was like, we've started together. I want to finish together and all of it. So then it did get us a little break, but we had, it was funny. So we had that. I had surgery that week of Thanksgiving, and then the presentation got canceled because of the snow.
Right, but the paper still due.
Yeah, paper still due. And so we had let our team, you'll laugh at this story, but we let our team kind of do the paper, and like, you guys have got it, all that. So I'm at home, and I get that call from Mike Fields. He's like, hey, Kim, I know you're recovering. I know you're home, but do you think you could take a look at this paper? And I'm like, really, Mike? He goes, we could really just use your help. Do you think you could help look at this paper? And so and I laugh because people might be going, oh my God, how could Mike even ask you that? But it was actually one of the best things that could have happened, because rather than sitting around feeling sorry for myself or like, oh,
you were relevant.
It was actually to be able to, it was the best possible distraction you could have asked for, because I'm like, all right, I don't have to think about being in pain. I'm trying to get my mind engaged rather than thinking about my body, recovery, and all that. And obviously I was smart about it, but, he kind of brought me back in and said, okay, let's get this paper done. So we got the paper done. So I think then you did have a break. So that was actually good. So I was able to recover from the surgery, had all that. And then I was ready to go back, because it was the first week of January. I think we had that class got scheduled for us. So I had gotten through Christmas, and I had my first chemo treatment was that week of the week after Christmas. So that first week of January, I went on Monday for the chemo, and I'm like, oh, I'm feeling great after the chemo. It's okay. I can make this work. Then you had to go back, and the second day they go back and they give you this shot. It's basically to spur on growth of white blood cells. And so it's like this major shot, you go and have it. So 2 days after getting that shot, I could not get out of bed. And I had the worst pain. It was excruciating. I mean, it was just like, I couldn't believe I couldn't even move. It was the worst pain ever. And I just kept there thinking, going, how on earth am I going to do this? Like, how am I going to take care of my kids? How am I going to get to class and all of it, and make it through? And even not having my parents here, how am I going to, take care of my own kids? And at that point, calling, we were supposed to have class, and I couldn't even get out of bed. And, I ended up not going to that class weekend. And the team did the presentation without me, and ended up going back to the oncologist that, we determined that reaction I had was a result of the shot, not so much of the chemo. The chemo still make you tired, but we decided not to do that shot after, because it was, I guess, that spurring on the white blood cells just totally took it out of me. So, but all that said, after that class, we came back, and so the next weekend is when we finally got into class. So that was one of those times where, I was feeling better, got back to it. I was going back to work the next week, but I went into class that Thursday and Friday, and go into class. And the thing I'm greeted for when I walk in the door is a sea of pink. And all the classmates were wearing pink, just kind of showing their support, been there for you. And, I can't tell you, it was just one of those things that was incredible, what it meant to me just to know that everybody had my back and was, there for support. And that's where you talk. It's so much more than just the education. It was the connection with our class that we had. Yeah.
The class is just incredible. And the amount of growth that we saw with people through the class as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So now we go in, now you and I get assigned to the team with Jubert and Matt and Mike, so now we're rolling into that, right? And all while the world is still going on, still doing chemo, still doing work, still doing kid stuff. Now we're starting another team, another new thing, right?
Yeah.
And getting ready for our international trip, right? Exactly. And so when you say deep change, what would you say are some of the major points of your deep change that you were like, I thought I went through deep change, but man, I really went through some deep change? What would you say are some of those points?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think if you look in the book, so it's by Robert Quinn, the thing that he says is that deep change means surrendering control. And that's probably the biggest aspect of it, because I've been a control freak since day one, I think. And you know this clearer than I think. And you get into this process and this journey of going through, the cancer diagnosis, the treatment, all of it, the class, that was the biggest thing I learned, is I had to let go of control and having to learn to lean into others, and that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to take help, and to really, you're going to become a stronger leader when you realize what people can give to you and not just what you can control or make happen. And so I think that's the transformation that I see, is like letting go of control, to let things happen and to really let it unfold. Surrendering control. I mean, there's still aspects of control, of course, that you have to have. But I think that's that whole thing of life's going to happen, and then how do you adapt? How do you make the most of it to really transform? And, it is one of those things it sounds crazy to say, but having cancer was the best thing that could have happened to me. And you're like, how can you say that? It's crazy. But, when you look at it from a standpoint, it was one of those rare opportunities in life to really see the impact that you've had on other people and how much people truly care about you. From a standpoint when you see people rallying around you or bringing you meals to help feed you and your kids when you're sick with chemo, or you have friends calling to check in on you saying, what do you need? And, are you and Laura, I remember you guys, sending me flowers on my birthday, just sitting there thinking about you. It's a rare opportunity just to realize how connected you are and how you have influenced other people's lives, and that, there's just such a strong network around you. So that's something I'll always be grateful for, is just that opportunity to realize how lucky I am, those people that I have around me.
So folks like you and me and Andrew, who you met out there in the passing is recorded before you here, is we're abnormal people, Kim. Normal people hold the status quo. Normal people don't want to disrupt, the being of the planet, the universe. They want to, do their 40 hours and, have the weekends off and stuff like that. So abnormal people like us, I believe, gravitate to each other because normal people don't understand the statement you just said is cancer is the best thing that would happen to me. And like you remember my experience after, during the middle of the program, I got an offer, left everything that was safe and secure to go to this company, everything that I knew, right, to go to that, where just 2 years later lost everything, right? I mean, just totally shit the bed on this one, right? And so when I have people ask me, man, I bet you if you could go back and change it, you'd change it. And I go, no, I wouldn't. And they're like, you don't regret that? And I said, the only thing about that I wish I could change was the pain that it caused my family, right? To look at my family and go, hey, I lost everything. We got to sell the house. Oh yeah, we're holding a bag for $4 million. Oh yeah, it's going to cost tens of thousands of dollars in lawyers. And people are like, and I think only abnormal folks like ourselves can understand no, that was the best thing that could have happened to me, because it's what I call that rude awakening shift that really grounds you to go, I need to really take inventory of where I'm at and where I'm going and what is this, right?
Mm-hmm. What's important to you?
Yeah. And 100%. Then you dive in and it causes a different perspective, because I think normal people quit. Yeah. They don't want to fight that hard, right? And I'm okay with being abnormal. Of course, I mean, you were in class with me for 2 years. I'm about as abnormal as they come. But I was able to also, like you're able to lean in to the classmates, right? And I remember, in August of 2016, just sitting there like, man, this is not good. I'll never forget sitting in my kitchen looking at a $300 electric bill, and it was probably $320, whatever, but it was around $300. I was like, how the hell am I going to pay that electric bill? And if I can't pay an electric bill, that's really the least of my problems. But I was able to reflect on what I had learned from all of y'all. And I was able to reflect on looking at your situation and going, this is not end all be all. You just got to take action, right? And you got to figure out, how do you take that action? And that's when, like when you talk about control, this is probably the first time after the program that we had talked about surrendering control. Because let's face it, Marines, PD, kind of control freaks, right? And I understood the concept, but I didn't comprehend the concept. And that was the forming stages for me to go, what ultimately now that even Cagle and I talked about on his recording is what I call the 3 arenas of control. First off, something happens. Someone or something happens, right? Do I have control of the situation? Yep. If I do, great. Take control of the situation, make whatever necessary adjustments. The second phase is, okay, I don't have control over it, but I have a workaround or some influence to help through the situation, right? And then the third one being there is no control, there is no influence, there is no workaround, there is no manipulation, there is nothing. And it's what I call just disengage from that at that moment because you're a hamster on a hamster wheel, spend a lot of time and energy going nowhere real quick when you have no control, no influence, no anything else. And I would learn starting then, which is funny to think it's 5.5 years ago. I mean, it's kind of a long time ago, but not really a long time ago, to be able to go, okay, right? And then now even more so, still a student in the learning of it, right? But to be able to sit there and look at things and assess, okay, where am I at in the control sphere of this? Which of those categories am I in right now? Because if I'm in control of it, take control of it. If I have a workaround or some influence, do that. And if I don't, jump ship and go, right? And so it was really interesting is a lot of these lessons that we would talk, concepts we would talk about in class, it would take some real world experience before they made sense, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Well, and think about it too, like here we are now, the post-COVID. I mean, like you talk about things getting completely thrown out of control, with this COVID comes on, shuts down the country, shuts down things as we know it. And so that whole being open to change, and how can you be willing to take it in? I mean, and it shut a lot of people that we know down, just not knowing to know how to adapt and how to respond to it. And so it's interesting, like even if you learn these lessons in one area and then something else comes along, we had no way to foresee, we had no way to plan, but bringing these other lessons to bear, that it comes back to it and you're like, oh, this is deep change for the entire country, for the entire, entire population, that we look at how to reengage and how to connect and how to go forward.
Yeah. And then so there's another funny thing that was going on during all of this. This just really speaks to your character and the character of others that are in our classes. In 2013, that's when I initially got Cowtown Warriors started. Before it was called Cowtown Warriors. We were doing our first event. And here it is, I'm 60 days out from the event happening, and it was just all falling apart, right? Because when it brings up, because especially since we were, 8th annual event was, this last weekend.
Yeah.
And it was falling apart. And I was sitting there going, what am I going to do? And the class jumped in and sponsored a bunch of tables. And the program sponsored tables since then. And classmates still coming, since, our first event, which was January 18th of 2014. Mm-hmm. So not only all of that going on, you still jumped in and said, hey, what can I do for you? How can I support you in coming and doing this? And it was just, you see things like that, and you're right. You can't put that on paper for someone to understand what all that means. And then now, 9 years later, because COVID canceled last year's, to be at the event Saturday night and looking around and just going, God, this wouldn't have been fully pulled off if it wasn't for my class and 2013's class jumping in and sponsoring some tables. And I think about that. Every time we have an event, I think about that. I look around and go, wow, we've raised millions of dollars and helped hundreds of veterans, and it would have never got off the ground if it wasn't for my classmates that already had maybe a few things going on, like fighting cancer, single mom, running a marketing firm and full-time MBA program. Like, hey, what? Yeah. Hey, thanks, Spann. Thanks a lot for throwing another steak on the grill here that had no room.
You knew how to get us involved, for sure. But no, I think it was a moment of pride, I think, on Saturday night, just to see you recognized at Cowtown Warriors for your contributions. And, one of those things I think that as a class, as an EMBA group, is that we take such pride in others' accomplishments. So it's your accomplishment and everything you did, but, it's like a proud mom, proud sister, whatever, sitting there watching you being recognized and knowing how hard, you worked and how hard you shaped it. And, and I think you took the best skill of looking at the assets of talent and, all of that we had in the room and throughout our alum. And you have brought so many people to support causes or to, whether it's supporting the MBA program financially, giving, if it's Catch on Warriors, even if it's making those connections across companies or people you need to know. You've been such a great connector on that. And then, like I said, to be able to see how it's evolved, to be there, because I had forgotten about it, but that first program was like the first time I'd worn my wig out in public at that event and going to it, and then seeing all of the events over the years and where it's come. It's been fun to see.
Well, I did not see that coming on Saturday either, right? Cool. It's not often for Jeremy Spann to be in front of a microphone and be a little bit speechless. Like I had even practiced with Laura to keep that thing under 5 minutes because everybody says I talk too damn much when I get in front of a microphone, which is no surprise, right? But I was like, I'm going to get it down to 5 minutes because we want to get people in and out. Let's do this. And it put me on tilt, right? Matter of fact, it was funny because all the board members were like, yeah, we had an over and under whether or not you'd cry. And I was like, no, I'm not going to cry in front of people. I didn't do that, Laura will tell you that. But I was just like, and then the high A in me was like, oh, I'm not walking off this stage till I at least get another $100,000, right? And then it was just kind of funny because I had asked Peterson, I said, before then, I said, hey, do we have some big check writers in here that if I ask for $25,000, they'll do it? And he's like, oh, yeah. And then I got up there and I was like, who wants to give $25,000? Crickets. And I was like, well, this is not going. I not only lost my speech, forgot what I was going to say. I already know I've been on this damn microphone way too long and nothing's going according to plan. So it was, hey, time to improvise, trying to get in there. And we did. We ended up raising over $100,000,
That's awesome.
To be able to do that. And it was just, so it was just kind of funny. That threw me off because, as loud as I am, I don't take public recognition very well. I get weirded out by that stuff, right? It throws me off. I don't want it, right? And part of it is it's a weird thing inside of me. Actually, it's two parts, it's blessing and curse. So the blessing of it, I would say, is there's a little bit of humbleness in it, and that I don't do things because I want it to be about me, right? I want it to be about others. I want it to be about things and people that I care about and not me. I don't want the spotlight on me. I want it there. And then the ego part of me is like, well, I know I'm going to pull it off, so I don't need any recognition. so it's weird for me to get recognized on stuff. I don't respond well to it, especially when I'm put on the spot, which they knew that.
Yeah.
And they wanted to put me on the spot. Well, let me ask you this, all right? And this is a selfish question.
Okay.
I got a selfish question. So here we are, August of 2013, and you meet Jeremy Spann. What goes through your mind when you meet me? And it's okay. Lay it out.
No, it's funny. I mean, I think you have such an engaging personality. And I mean, obviously it was clear from the very beginning you were one of the leaders of the class as far as rallying everyone and, just getting people together and rounded up. And, I don't think I've ever told you this, but I remember we were sitting in that first in residence, and they start talking about the awards at the end of the class. Do you remember this? Mm-hmm. And they're like, so when we get to the end of the class, you'll have a chance to vote for a team, your classmate of the year, and there'll be the faculty will choose the same. And so, so I sat there. I'm like, this is going to be Jeremy Spann's award. He is going to win this, classmate of the year. There's no doubt in my mind, And so, and as it kept going, I'm like, this is Jeremy. I mean, there's no, question. So we get into the form, I fill it out, and of course you were my vote that I put on there. So, but no, I think it was one of those things that leadership was there. Now, of course you talk about me being a little bit more on the introvert side, and you're on the far extrovert side on the wall, but But that's also what I think draws so many people to you, is that if you have a little bit of introvert, you bring them out, you carry them along, you make those introductions, you do it. So, but I think it was, the other thing I liked is that you're always so self-effacing, that from a standpoint that, yes, you're loud, but you didn't mind making yourself, the butt of the joke if it had to be, if it kind of made that point. If we were in negotiations and Rita Kosnick is our professor and makes you put on the boxing gloves and get on your knees so that, she can really point out how you, as the former interrogator, are now in negotiations and know nothing about negotiations. So I think that was, it was humorous, but I think it was also speak to you to be able to say, I can take this to help people learn and see it. But and at the same time, I would say that as you looked at, you had one of the most visible transformations over the course of the class too, because again, you were out there and facing. And so I do think you came in kind of a little bit, I know this all, I got this covered. It's going to be easy. We're going to do it. And then I think as it progressed, you're like, yeah, I got a little bit more to learn. And I know that first evaluation was hard. And when we sat down, we had our first team meeting. On the second one, you're like, you guys help me get there, to it. And I think that's where we had that accountability, that there's no judgment of good, bad. It's just like, this is something that you want to achieve. We're going to help you get there, is that accountability to each other as a team. And then I think as a class too, that we got there. But it was funny. I mean, I think, from the get-go, you were just always fun, always engaging. But then when you looked at how far you had come to really be open to feedback, to bring it in, to really, think about it. Now, did you talk a lot? Yes, you talked a lot. And we got over that. And we were like cutting it, we do our presentations. And you remember I'd be going, Jeremy. Let's go.
Cut that down. So let me ask you, so when and this kind of segues into a question I'm going to get to is, so here it is, you're dealing with me, right? Kind of a big personality male, kind of knowing my history, my resume, and I'm like, hey, I need y'all to jump in and say something. Was there any hesitation or anything else like that to be able to look at someone like me and be like, man, all right, well, if you want me to be outspoken, was there ever any hesitation or anything else like that? Or was it, no, all right, you need some help, I'll lean in on this?
I think, well, I mean, for you specifically, I don't think there was a hesitation, because I think you were open to it, all of that. But I think, as far as for me personally, that was an area of growth. So I mentioned like meeting with Paulette of conflict, resolution or conflict management, that was always a hard thing for me to really address conflict straight on, where that was even going into the program. And so, but even by you throwing that challenge out there, saying, giving feedback to me, that was something that gave me a chance to work on it. Like, how can I be better at sharing feedback, sharing thoughts, addressing challenges or issues as they arose? And, so even though it was for you, it also helps me work on kind of going back and how are we able to get better at the feedback, get better at issues as they came up. And, our group, we had a couple of times where we're like, this isn't working, or, hey, we got to get to it. You need to do the work. You need to, do it. And I think, we had the challenge of, we had some tough classes that we were tackling at the time between finance and finance specifically wasn't the one that stood out. Some of the subjects were different for us being in marketing and other aspects. So,
well, I remember one of the more impactful ones is I'd made it through life by being able to manipulate people and situations. And y'all were not going to let me do that. And I remember as we were gearing up for our global studies, and I'm the only Spanish speaker in class, I'm not only arranging meetings for our team, but other teams and reaching out and so forth. And then I won't forget, is you had come up and you said, hey, look, it's great, you speak Spanish, but this is a serious meeting that we're going down to in Argentina. It was either Argentina or Chile. I can't remember which one it was. But there was one of them where it was like, hey, they're gonna be coming in and this is serious stuff. Like, how good is your Spanish? And the ego in me wanted to say, no, we're going to be just fine, right? But then I had to go back and go, wait a minute. There's a lot of technical things in business and in the translation of that I don't quite know yet. Because, I mean, I've been working government work, right? I don't have a whole lot of business acumen, well, outside of Pizza Place at that point, that we would talk a lot about in those classes.
We would talk about
but I was like, I really had to go, wait a minute, I can't let these folks down because there's a lot of concepts I still don't understand about business yet, where if I don't even understand them in our MBA program, how am I going to understand that and translating in a different language?
Yeah.
And I was embarrassed too, because I was like, man, I've kind of floated my flag on, this is what I'm going to do, And then I was really nervous, believe it or not, to tell y'all, like, hey, we may just need to hire a translator. And that was getting right before we were going to go do that. And instead the response was, thanks for being honest about that. And I was like, oh, cool. I was like, whew. But I was super nervous because I'd always, I had overplayed my hand. I was trying to overplay my hand about what I could do to help people on the international trip, so I wouldn't have to do as much on some of the other stuff we were doing. And you guys were great about going, hey, that's great that this is going to be your little arena over here of strength, but you still got to jump in and do this. We need your help on this. And that was really good growth for me, right? Yeah. To be able to go, okay, if you're going to ask for feedback, then you better take action on the feedback that you get. And so that helped me grow as a person through all that. So, but the reason I was alluding to asking that is, being a woman in the business workplace, I mean, I'm sure you have, I mean, so and if it's a landmine, we don't have to step on this one. But facing that of, well, you're a female, so you're having to swim upstream a little bit per se to fight some adversity that's already being put there on you without them realizing what your talents and capabilities are.
I'm sure. We could have a whole separate conversation about that. Too. But I think, looking at the international trip, it was interesting going into those meetings because, again, I was only female in our group. Yeah. And I believe, if I'm remembering, of all of the companies we met with related to energy, they were all males that we met with, I think, if I'm remembering in that group. Yep. And going into it, again, I had a perception that, again, going into South America, it was going to be very male-dominated, even more so, more machismo kind of aspect. And I had even written my paper on it. And surprisingly, when we got to South America and we understood there was so much female leadership as far as in the country leadership and all of it. And yet the companies that we went to were very male-dominated. And I think it was the second company when we were in, I want to say it was when we were in Santiago, that we were in the meeting and the people we met with would not even let me talk. Like I would ask a question, he would ignore it, and I'd go to ask another question. And I think at one point you stepped in and I said, well, I think what Kim is trying to say. And I think you even paraphrased it to finally get them to answer the question that I had. And so that was kind of one of those, it was an interesting almost dynamic to see, because on one hand, South America was so progressive in female leadership as you're looking at it. And yet we are in the boots on the ground kind of meeting with a business, and they're like, yeah, they're not even acknowledging, whether it was I was American or a female, whatever it wasn't happening.
Yeah. No. That is, yeah. And it was, and I can remember because there is, because I'm, just who I am just in personality is I even would have to curb what I was going to taking actions, and sometimes no, hey, she's a big girl. She knows how to take care of this. She'll get it. So it helped me kind of take myself aback to go, wait a minute, no, I know which one you're talking about. Where I was finally just getting frustrated enough. Like, no, hey, look, here's the deal, Chief. Like, this is the leader of the group over here. You need to listen to what she's saying. But it was really hard to really step back because I wanted to come in and saved the day, but that wouldn't have benefited, right? By always doing something like that.
Right.
And, so it's like even like Laura and I, because Laura and I have been business partners now for, 5.5 years. Turns out, when you lose everything, your wife looks at you and says, hey, we should go into business together. And I was just like, did you not hear anything I just said? Like, I just totally lost everything. But going into business, and here's Laura, who I, of course, not just by being my wife, but my best friend and my partner in business and everything else, who's an incredibly intelligent woman with over 2 decades of experience in the real estate industry and a law degree, and how sometimes we'd be sitting there in a conversation and she's clearly the subject matter expert and they're sitting there looking at me and I'm like, don't look at me. I don't know anything what's going on. You need to look at her. Yeah. And it was probably then that I really, really, truly working with Laura started to see there is at times. Yeah. Are there other business companies that, are totally good and everything else? Yeah. But it certainly exists out there because I see it even to this day. When Laura's like, here's what we need to do. And then when somebody look at me and go, what do you think? Well, I think that whatever she just said, right? And it's present. It's out there, right? And, so that's one of the things that I definitely really had a lot of admiration for you is when I said, hey, this is what I want to do to adjust. And you're like, okay, well, let's do some adjusting. And there was no hesitation on calling me out on some stuff. Yeah. And that helped me become a better professional. And it helped me because what I didn't realize was when we were going through the program is it was preparing me and training me for what would happen 2 years later in August of 2016. Mm-hmm. Because instead of just falling down and not being able to do anything or go, what am I going to go do next? I was able to go, okay, here's what the next steps are going to be, and then let's go do it. And now life is significantly different than it was 5.5 years ago. Yeah. And actually significantly different than what it was 31 years ago when I joined the Marines. And it's just funny how being a part of that executive MBA program with so many folks in there that we just, not just, we're here talking with us. There were so many people in there that had different growth and just, it was just really amazing and special to watch. And yes, this is a plug for TCU's Executive MBA program. Please go and
we
do
both
that.
Serve, yes, but still both serve on the alumni board. So
right,
we got that. But.
Yeah. So we like to encap all these by going. If you could go back to 20-year-old self, and 20-year-old Kim would listen to one thing and one thing only from present-day Kim, what would you tell 20-year-old self?
So much, but I think I would really kind of go back to life is short. It goes by so much faster than you will have any idea of. So that being said, do it now. Don't put off what you can do right now. Take advantage of every opportunity you get. Say yes to it. Take the risk. Get the braces earlier, do things, take the trip, go out on that date, whatever it is. But I think it's going back and just, you don't know what's going to happen. So make the most of every moment you have right now. And
you're almost a full empty nester now, aren't you?
I know. It's very scary.
Isn't it crazy?
Very scary. Yes.
I can tell you it's very nice, though.
It is, but I will say this, that it is interesting looking at it. It is yet another time of transformation because for so long, especially as a single mom, you define yourself as mom. And not that being a mother ever goes away, but you don't have to take care of anybody else. And, it's almost this new stage of, okay, what do I want to do with my next phase of life now that the kids are going to be out of the house and on. So you continue to transform. It's not, can't sit and be the same.
It is. Like Laura and I are right now in the process of downsizing our house here yet again because it was just like the house we have. And even though it's not huge, 2,500 square feet, we're still about 1,000 square feet more than what we need when it's just she and I now, right? And then it is that there's that adjustment period that comes with that. Well, so people want to learn more about you. Where do they go to find more on you?
welcome to connect on LinkedIn. You look for the Kim Speairs with that weird I in it, last name. So happy to do that, and send me a message through LinkedIn and we can connect that way.
And for those of y'all that are driving, you weren't listening to this and you needed that information, what you can do is always go to our website, myexperiencedrealtor.com. That's experience with an ED. And click on podcasts and then learn more on Kim's episode here. Amazing, amazing journey and story. She is a superhero. You will always be a superhero to me. And of course, if you're looking to buy and sell real estate anywhere on the planet, click that find a trusted professional, and then we'll find you somebody wherever you're looking. But hey, on this episode, really, I mean, you pass this episode on to somebody that really needs to hear it, because you can take control of your life and make an incredible difference like Kim. Thank you for coming on the show, Kim.
Thanks, Jeremy.